Hello everyone. While you're enjoying your food, please do come and join us starting in just a minute to talk about food as heritage with Thistles and Dandelions. Thistles and Dandelions is a national lottery heritage funded project run by Empowering Women for Change, who aim to support Glasgow's Black, Asian, minority ethnic, migrant, refugee and asylum seeking women to access heritage. The organisation's focus is on building skills and community and working towards greater diversity in the heritage sector. And I will hand over now to Romy Galloway from Thistles and Dandelions and the rest of the team for their discussion. Please, this is an informal opportunity to have a conversation about food while you're eating your food. So hopefully it's enjoyable.
Thanks very much, Nikki. Thanks for having us so much, and thanks everyone for joining us. It's been already a really incredible day of talks, and I've just been like frantically taking notes and saving links on my laptop. So I'll kind of give a little background as well, but thanks for that one just there. We are Thistles and Dandelions, a heritage lottery funded project by the organisation Empower Women for Change. And our project is about supporting women in access to heritage with a focus on more Black, Asian and minority ethnic representation in heritage through developing community and building skills. So I'm Romy and I'm the Community Engagement Officer, and I wonder if the rest of our group could just introduce themselves briefly just now as well.
I might just go quickly. I'm Mirella and I am the volunteer coordinator for Thistles and Dandelions.
Hello, I'm Iram Zubairi. I'm one of the volunteers at the Thistles and Dandelions, and I'm pleased to be speaking today.
Hello, I'm Lana. I'm also a volunteer. Hi, I'm Anime and I'm also a volunteer.
Hello, I'm Fiza and I'm one of the volunteer coordinators. Nice to see everybody.
I think we've also got other members here as well who can chime in at any point if they like. So if you're sticking around for the afternoon talks, you'll hear a bit more detail about the Thistles and Dandelions project, but it is about opening up heritage spaces like galleries and museums. And a strand of this is also about opening up heritage. So encouraging our group to decide for themselves what is heritage, how to celebrate it and discuss it. And with COVID forcing us out of the museums for the last wee while, we've kind of had the opportunity to look at where else heritage happens. And during the last month, our first block of workshops, we've been looking at heritage at home and more personal relationships with heritage. So some of us have found food to be a really great way to work with these themes. So we thought we would share with you some of the way food plays into our own identities for the next half an hour, and we'd love for you to join in and share your own thoughts. And first on the next slide, we've got this poetry reading by Rumaisa Zubairi, who works with themes of heritage and identity in her work, just to get us into the discussion. So I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, my name is Rumaisa Zubairi and I'm going to be reading a poem I wrote. The poem is about heritage, family traditions and identity. I hope you enjoy. I mix myself into the golden pot of glistening onions, garam masala, ghee. Our spices exist in two planes, and I always hesitate, finding the commonality between elaichi and cardamom, cinnamon and darchini. Something is lost in translation between 2 kg plastic bags filtered into old olive jars and tiny glass bottles with two-way lids for recipes in which a pinch of salt and pepper are considered seasoning. After so many years of spice trade, I count cloves and think of the love hiding within them. Turmeric is only a rough translation for a root my father tells me dyes saris the color of the sun, heat and spice draped in 6 yards of fabric. women wrapped in sunshine. But I've just stained my clumsy fingers with haldi, and if I'm not careful, there will be yellow thumbprints on my shirt. The pot is simmering now, and I watch steam escape through the open window. The neighbors tell us they love the smell of our cooking. But I close the kitchen door, because garlic is not a good smell for uniforms. Curry girl is not a good name for me. My grandmother wrote her recipes out in neat Urdu, line after line, to be passed down. My mother has written them out in her other tongue, because we would struggle to make out the letters otherwise. Perhaps we are too used to reading print with its impersonal perfection. Or perhaps we've just not found a place to fit this skill. I need bread with flour almost the color of my skin. This flour is whole. Golden wheat under golden sun. And when it catches under my nails, I think of the earth. The push and stretch of yeasty dough, like so many miles of stepping and climbing of left foot, right foot over Monroes and hills freckled with mosaics of heather and bracken. Those trees take our city breath and swap it for theirs. Nature's kiss. These are the trees we see from the aeroplane. Out here, the granite walls between us fall away to granite hills, to be climbed. The thistles offer their blooming crowns in regal purple. Their home is the forgotten world, and yet they've become an icon. We stop for oatcakes and kebab rolls, and then we're back to granite countertops. In this kitchen, we've poured warm oil on our heads so many times, fingers massaging the scalp, willing the strands to grow. I think of those crofts and how I only plow braids into my hair. Outside the window, there are dandelions. People call them weeds, but I admire them. How they grow unafraid of gardeners' fingers, like the sunflower's less intimidating cousin, tooth of lion. I make a wish. May we grow like thistles and dandelions, and may my cooking be always seasoned with sunshine. Thank you.
So if we could just move on to the next slide, and thank you so much, Ramisa, for the really beautiful and very personal piece of work. I don't think I can hope to be nearly as eloquent or profound, but I hope everyone's had the chance to get something to eat or sitting with a nice tea or coffee. And please share with us what you're having. All contributions to the discussion are welcome, and if anything pops up for you while we're discussing our own meals and stories, please share it. You can type in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourselves and join in as well. This is just meant to be a fun and informal session to break up the day of all the talks. So Erin's going to start us off with a story about her biryani.
Okay, I'm really excited to be sharing a personal example of the role food plays in heritage. The recipe I have today is a Sindhi biryani recipe. Biryani was taught to me by my amazing aunt. I remember requesting her to make biryani every time I visited her. Just like some people have a Sunday lunch, at my parents' home, biryani was cooked every Friday and served after the Friday prayers. We all looked forward to it as its aroma filled the kitchen and the dining room. The biryani can be made with chicken, meat, or fish, and it's a very fragrant dish. And some people prefer it with potatoes or without. For me, biryani without potatoes is simply not a biryani. And in some parts of Pakistan, people don't like biryani because they consider meat fit to be eaten only with bread. What does a recipe mean? A recipe means to me, it reminds me of someone that loved and cared about us, and it's something to hold on to for years to come and to pass on to children. Does anyone else have any special recipes that they would like to share with, or do they have any special recipes that they have on special occasions? The city I belong to, biryani is a very royal dish. It's cooked on, specially made on special occasions like official dinners and weddings. Thank you. Would anybody like to share any recipes that they would like, they have of their family members?
Grand. Thanks so much. That was beautiful. I can relate to you talking about food being passed down through families as like sort of heritage. And for me, my father, who's Kurdish, he would always talk about how he'd get a little spot of money when he was younger, and he'd run on the way to school. He'd run, and he'd go to a little cart and get a lentil soup, which he said would like last for the whole day. And when I was growing up, I used to get cooked every, like in the mornings we'd make lentil soup. And I know that later on in life, his mum, he sort of asked his mum, even though he'd never cooked in his life in his mum's house, but he'd asked his mum, like, can you give me the recipe, because I want to like show my kids da 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 da. And just think about my grandmother whenever I eat that. So I also eat it in the mornings, which most Scottish people find disturbing, but I just wanted to add on to that.
So do you have the soup with bread, or do you have it with a spoon?
We do have it with bread and with a spoon, both. But yeah, there's not really, can't recall any sort of one or the other like specifics. Yeah. What about you? Is it only with bread, or is it?
Yes, generally it's with bread.
Right.
See, the soup, Lana, you're saying is so like nice. When we go to the mosque, they serve these kind of nice before fasting. You know, when you're fasting and you're trying to open your fast, and they serve these small, small pots of soup, and it's so like full of energy, and you feel you're filled up when you open your fast, and it's really delicious. And I love biryani. And my mouth is watering. I can smell and taste the biryani. My mom makes very nice biryani as well. I remember my childhood memories. Whenever she used to make, for biryani, we cook rice separately, and, the meat and the sauce separately. So I used to love that, the sauce. And she used to always keep some aside for me. So whenever I'm making it, I remember her all the time.
I like that as well, those like specific like recipes from people passed down through generations, and they just taste slightly different when other people make them, and those kind of handwritten notes of them all as well. When we were talking before about, I've got recipes from my mum, and it's just really hard to decipher. Her handwriting's terrible, and loads of the ingredients lists are just like a bunch of herbs and stuff like that, but it always tastes so specific to those people and how they make it.
Mm-hmm.
Anime, did you have a dish as well?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I did have a dish. So mine is a mushroom stew, which is a dish I kind of made up by myself. So here in Iram's and Lana's dishes really show like a strong link between heritage and food. But my parents or family like weren't really into cooking that much, or using it as a tool to like create social situations, I guess. So in fact, if I brought one of the dishes my mum gave me, she used to feed me like ready-made quiche and crisps like all the time. So yeah, that kind of shows how little she was into cooking. And my family were quite working class. And I don't know, I don't think that has like a strong link to it. But so when I got older and I started going around to my friend's house, and I thought it was amazing how they made food and how welcomed it made you feel. So when I was able to, I kind of made my own traditions of food. I became really passionate about welcoming people and comforting them with food. So I was kind of just wondering if anyone had a similar dish that they've kind of adapted themselves, or any new traditions that they've made and want to pass down to people.
That's a really interesting point, like that idea of not having necessarily those like definitive ties or traditions set, and at a certain age everybody kind of ends up trying to do that work for themselves or set up their own recipes and find what it is that they're interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like do more of that actually. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that both of my parents really didn't like cooking, and because my mum was she's French Dutch, so I never found out what traditional kind of British food was like until I started working in a pub when I was 18. But if we went to my grandparents in France, we would always have these really huge steamed artichokes with like vinaigrette and things, and there was this very kind of physically intimate process of peeling away the leaves and like biting the flesh off and everything that was really sensory and exciting. And that's something that I would like to recreate here, but I feel like the artichokes are so small that you can't really do it in the UK in the same way.
That's really funny as well. Yeah, people having to adapt recipes from other places and like just kind of entirely change them because of what ingredients you can or can't get in different places.
Yes, we've had someone on the chat saying that someone had a Sunday morning comfort food included bacon rolls, but now her kids are vegetarian, so she misses the shared experience now.
That's funny as well, because we've had a conversation about this kind of passing down recipes from generations being this kind of way to share knowledge, and a lot of this generation having to adapt them to make them veggie. So like processes of how you kind of make it your own, and everybody seemed to be doing very similar things right now in trying to make them all veggie and swap out stuff. What do you swap bacon rolls for?
And someone has said that on the chat that they don't have family recipes, but they've tried different foods when they travel, and when they return home, they just are reminded of their food, and they cook dal to remind them of the time in India, and khoshari to remember their travels in Egypt.
Nice. I've never managed to like pick up recipes from places. I just have really intense memories of very good meals in different places, and then think I'll never be able to do that.
I've just had a lot of. I've been pretty lucky. I've gotten friends who've given me recipes also. So I've just added on recipes from whoever I can make friends with.
Collect them from people. My mum has like a recipe book that I'm kind of like always just taking pictures of and essentially recreating on my own phone. I haven't actually gotten around to making one myself and collecting everyone's recipes for it.
And then we have somebody else also saying that her mother talked about gannets and guga. She holidayed at Ness Luz, the strong smell of the bird. She said it tasted of nothing but fish. When her aunt cooked it in the 90s, she managed to book one off from the waiting list to get them. The cat went mad, trying to get into the kitchen, scratching at the door. As she boiled it in the pot to desalt,
I don't think I've even heard of that before. It sounds smelly but good, yeah. Have you tried to recreate it since, Morag? Or is that the one and only time? There's also someone saying about when their mum and dad initially moved to Belfast from Pakistan and joined my uncle who had a chippy, and fish and chips became a Friday night tradition. And it continued when they moved to Glasgow. I remember doing the same as well, fish and chips. I think it was a Sunday night thing for us after we'd been like for our swimming lessons, and it always made me feel really sick because you just had like so much chlorine water in your belly. Top it up with fish and chips.
And then somebody has just said, I still call my mother and grandmother for cooking advice.
Yeah, fair. I think I don't know when I'll ever not need it cooking advice off of people.
When I came here about 14 years ago, then my mom gave me that, the Kokab Khwaja Urdu book. It's an Urdu recipe book. Ira might know about this or somebody else. Like, it's a very famous cook in Pakistan. Her name is Kokab Khwaja. Everybody knows her. She writes very good recipes. And still I used to phone my mom, Mom, I'm doing this. And I used to watch everywhere if somebody's watching me or not. So interesting. But you learn recipes every day, so like different. Now I cook food is kind of blend of Eastern and Western mix food. For example, salmon. I've never tasted salmon before in Pakistan, but I tasted it here. Now we put like all the spices. Sometimes we make it just with salt and pepper, but it's just every time we put different flavors, it tastes different. I don't know if anybody else tastes look at it the same way or.
Yeah, I think it's quite funny as well because like I wonder if anime you'd have something to say of the same about kind of trying to build your own recipes and your own kind of flavors from scratch. And there is that thing about Scottish food as well, that it borrows from so many different cultures that have kind of gotten involved in it. And so I never seem to have that kind of distinction like you were talking about, Fizza, of like East and West, and it kind of all seems to come together and just a weird array of recipes.
Yeah, for me, when I was younger, I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos about people cooking. That's kind of where I learned to cook almost, which is kind of, I guess it's similar to watching like your grandparents or someone like cooking a certain dish. That's kind of how I learned myself.
There's someone saying here, it wasn't until, I think it's Morag, it wasn't until I was an adult that I realised why I didn't like my paternal grand's cooking. It didn't taste right because it was my mother that taught me to cook, not my father. The first time I visited my maternal grand in my teens on Lewis, she cooked properly. Women passing down traditions without realising it. And you never tried to cook. How do you pronounce it? Guga? Guga? There's a big demand. A waiting list. Waiting list for the Guga. I want to try it. It sounds good. That a thing about it being like maybe a kind of like gendered thing of cooking as well. I think it's my dad doesn't often do the cooking, but there's always like certain meals that he'll make, or my brothers as well, and it's like they're always like shepherd's pies or really long-winded dramatic affairs that are fraught with stress.
Can I ask something to everyone? Maybe it's just more like something I'm quite curious around what maybe other people's experiences around this is. But I found it quite interesting how I'm extremely passionate about food and I love cooking. It's the thing I do pretty much anytime I'm free. But sometimes I'm from Italy, and last time I came back from Italy, I brought back my mom's books. Like actually the encyclopedias are really heavy. I had to pay so much more money in the luggage to get them to fit in my bag. But then I got them here and they are lovely, and I like them to look on the shelf because it looks like the way it looked in my mom's kitchen, and I kind of tried to recreate the same idea with the plants around and everything. But when I go through the recipes, I realized that I can't really cook many of them, because now we're very much aware of maybe, I don't know, I'm quite aware of like what kind of, maybe I'm trying to be a bit more vegetarian, trying not to eat too much meat, or not to have too much fat, or not to have too much sugar. So it's interesting as well with traditional recipes. Traditional recipes tends to be quite heavy. So it's like, it's nice because I love when I go back to my grandma and I can eat all this really cool food, really tasty, but at the same time I'm also feeling a bit guilty because I'm not supposed to be eating these things, especially when, you know, now they were very much aware about sustainability and that kind of stuff. So I wonder what other people think about that, especially if you have these connections with your family recipes. Do you, like, for me, it's like I would love to be vegetarian, but at the same time I know that when I go home that would be impossible, first of all, to explain to my family, especially my grandparents, but also it's really difficult because I go there once a year and I just want to eat all the things that really reminds me. It's the one link that I have to home. It's like I can only go once a year. Now when I make the most of it, I love going to certain places that reminds me. We have a place in the place where I'm from where you go to the butcher, you buy the meat and you bring it to the restaurant yourself. You just walk and they cook it for you. And I love that. And it's like, I don't want to not do that anymore. So that's why I can't be vegetarian. So I am 99% vegetarian. I don't eat basically meat here. But when I go home, I can't, at the moment at least. I hope my son will take, maybe won't be exposed to that, and that means I will feel a bit less guilty. But yeah, it's an open question, I guess.
I think one of those things, like food, because it's such a sensory thing, it really does tie you so specifically to memories and places that I always find that it's the thing that I kind of cheat on as well, where I try to be veggie, but there's like recipes that are just not the same, and they don't have the same impact for me if I make them different, if I make them without the way my mom used to make them or whatever. So I don't know. I think everybody kind of has to redraw those lines for themselves and maybe take the meat to the restaurant. I don't know.
That must be quite exciting if people take meat to the restaurant. I've never actually seen that. Back home, people take bread flour for naan.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's almost like it's a place, but I'm from the very southeast coast of Italy, and it's pretty much everywhere in that region. Basically, it's almost like as if everyone is used to have food outside. So the idea is that you go to the butcher and the restaurant are owned by the same people usually, and so it's always a business. It's not like you randomly take into a random restaurant, but you buy, so that you're actually nearly paying for the price of the meat. You're not even paying for the cooking. It's whatever you paid for, you know, say I buy a kilo of sausages or something, you bring them around the corner or across the road to the restaurant, they cook it for you, and it's usually super simple plastic tables or paper cloth kind of set up outside, and it's almost like a barbecue idea, but it's slightly fancier, not really, because it's super cheap as well. And every town has got their own unique. They also try not to compete very much with each other, so one is specific for sausages, one is for lamb, one is for, sometimes it's also vegetarian things actually. But yeah, so that's why it's lovely. Because also you go and there's hundreds of people eating the same thing, and you know, so many things. And I know that they are now doing more. They are actually, I can see every time I go, their vegetarian menu is wider. So I guess maybe one day I will just switch to that. But
also, Ashley Hibbins says, I think it's okay to make occasional exceptions if you're a vegetarian or vegan. The insistence on being strict is what stops people from doing it at all. So you've got the right off. Also, we're just coming to 1:15, so we will wrap up just now and let people have like a quick wee minute break or whatever before the keynote speaker. So thanks very much for joining in, and we'll see you later on in the afternoon for the rest of our presentations. It was really lovely to speak to you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Romy, and everyone from Thistles and Dandelions. It was fantastic to hear your discussion, and somebody said my stomach's rumbling even though I've just had my lunch. And I think maybe it would be great if we could all get together sometime in the future and share food in person. I think that would be a lovely move on. So we'll just be starting again in a couple of minutes time with our afternoon session.